Welcome to the Own It Powercast, the place to be when you get serious about making big changes and accelerating growth in your life and in your relationships. Finally create the life you've always wanted, living life on your own terms. Learn how to take your fear and turn it into powerful choices that will create sustained change. Now your host, Mary Baker.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Own It Powercast, the place to come to get what you need to move yourself forward. Hey, it's Mary Baker and welcome to episode 286. This is a boundary too, the small daily choices that set the tone for your life. Well, welcome back as we finish out this month, which has been all about finding your confidence, your true north, and your sanity. Today I want to talk about something that doesn't always get labeled as boundary work, but I think absolutely is. You know, we usually think of boundaries as saying no to someone else, drawing a line with a partner, a parent, or a coworker. And yeah, those are critical. But I want to zoom in today on the less obvious boundaries we break all the time with ourselves. But before we get into that, I also want to remind you that if you need more help around getting healthier and working on your boundaries, and you want a positive approach, make sure you sign up for a power hour with me. You can do 1, you can do 3 of them, you can do 5, you can do whatever you want. And the link for that is right here in the show notes. Those session options are going fast, so sign up quickly if you want to do that. Okay, so let's get into it. What is the boundary you're probably missing? Have you ever planned out your day with this big long list thinking you're going to get it all done, you're going to finally feel accomplished, and you're going to finally catch up? And then life happens. You spill coffee. You can't find your keys. A friend texts you with a crisis. Your computer updates when you just need to send one quick email. You realize the errand you thought would take 20 minutes ends up taking 90. And suddenly you're behind and you're frustrated. Maybe even beating yourself up a little bit, wondering, what is wrong with me? Why can't I keep up? Here's the truth. There's nothing wrong with you. What's wrong is the unrealistic way we've been taught to treat our time, our energy, and our brains. We've been conditioned to plan like robots and execute like superheroes. There's no margin, there's no grace, and there's no pause. What's missing isn't hustle. I think it's buffer time. What's missing is a boundary with yourself, one that says, I'm allowed to be human today. Not perfect, not superhuman, just real. And honoring that boundary might just be the kindest thing you do for yourself all week. Buffer time is something that I've had to work on, and that's why I wanted to bring it up today, because it has made a huge difference in my life when I do it. But what do I mean by buffer time? Well, it's the space you build in between what you plan to do and what actually ends up happening. It's that margin you create to account for the reality that, guess what? Life isn't linear, nor is it predictable. It's the 10 minutes between meetings, the extra 15 minutes to find parking, time to run back in and grab your phone, or like me the other day, a dead car battery I didn't plan for. It's the breathing room between tasks so you can actually transition, both mentally and emotionally. But most people don't build in buffer time because they're trying to be efficient. But efficiency without margin, I think, is a setup for failure. Because it assumes you won't ever hit traffic, you won't ever get distracted, you won't take a wrong turn, you won't forget something, or, God forbid, just need a minute to breathe. Planning buffer time, I think, is one of the most loving boundary practices you can have for yourself. It's a way of saying, I don't expect perfection, I expect reality. And when you start to plan from a place of honesty, honesty about how long things are going to actually take, how much energy you really have, and how much time you need to regroup, I think you reduce your stress, you stop over-promising, and you begin to move through your day with a lot more calm and confidence. And that's why good boundaries start with good planning. Because without that space, you're always catching up. You're in reaction mode. You're putting out fires. And guys, that's where burnout thrives. It's exhausting. I want you to think of buffer time like that white space between the words on a page. Without it, everything runs together. It's overwhelming, it's hard to read, and it's impossible to follow. Well, the same goes for your day. Without buffer time, your schedule becomes a blur. One task bleeding into the next task, moment crashing into moment. And with no room to think, breathe, or reset. I think buffer time is that margin that makes the story of your day actually readable. It's what allows you to move with intention instead of just reacting. We know that without it, even the best plan becomes a source of stress. But with it, you have space to be human. So if I haven't convinced you yet that buffer time is really important, that you deserve it and need it, let's talk about the consequences of not sitting in reality, because that's kind of what we're doing. When we don't factor in margin, we're not living in reality. And living outside of reality creates anxiety, overwhelm, and burnout. Because I think there's always this tension between what we thought we would get done and what actually happened. Stephen Covey calls it buffer time, and that's where I get it from. I call it respecting what it means to be human. Boundaries aren't just for other people. They're about your time, your energy, your focus. And if you're constantly pushing and cramming and demanding unrealistic output from yourself, that's a boundary violation, plain and simple. And it just doesn't work. So let's break this down for a second. If you never give yourself transition time between your tasks, you're rushing and reacting and you're not moving with intention. If you don't build in space to think, you're just executing tasks and not actually leading your life. And if you don't schedule rest and reflection, you're going to burn out, period. You will. Something will give. You end up irritable, unclear, easily overwhelmed. And that's not because you're weak. I think it's more because you've abandoned your own needs for space and comfort. You would never expect a friend to run all day on an empty tank and still be kind, calm, and focused, would you? Well, then why do you expect it of yourself? For so many people, this expectation doesn't come out of nowhere either. I think it's learned. So a lot of this is not your fault. Maybe you grew up in a home where rest was seen as laziness, or where being productive meant you were lovable or safe. You got approval. Maybe you were praised for being the one who held it all together, stayed busy, and didn't need help. Over time, that conditioning sticks. You start believing your value is tied to how much you can get done or how well you perform under pressure. The problem is, though, when that belief goes unchallenged, you stop noticing just how hard you're pushing. You stop recognizing that you're operating on fumes until your body or your mood forces you to pay attention. This is why boundary work has to include how you treat you. Because expecting yourself to function without breaks, without margin, and without compassion isn't strength. It's self-neglect that's been normalized. And sometimes it's very subtle, like boundary work isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's just setting a realistic to-do list with only 3 priorities. Now, if you have time for more, great, then you can do more. It's leaving 10 minutes between calls instead of 2. It's choosing to do less so you can actually show up for what matters most. And it's saying, I need time to regroup or take notes after that meeting and actually building it in and making it happen. It's giving yourself planning time and time to assess how something went. It's about integrating new information and applying it. Guys, this is boundary work, and I think it is so powerful because every time you honor your capacity, you rebuild your self-trust. You stop letting your calendar, other people run the show, and you start running your own life again. So this week, I want to challenge you. What are the small ways you've been overriding your limits, pushing past your energy, or ignoring reality? I'm going to say that again. What are some of the small ways you've been overriding your limits, like not being in reality, pushing past what you really can get done realistically? And how has that felt? Was that enjoyable? Was it stressful? How can you bring in more truth and more space and more you, like what you would rather be doing? How can you bring in more truth, more space, and more you? What has your intuition been quietly tapping you on the shoulder about? Because when we start honoring these quiet boundaries, at first we might feel some anxiety about doing it, and that's normal. But eventually we feel calmer. And I think it's because we feel more in control, like healthy control. And then, we start to feel more confident in how we move through our day. And there's congruence. And we're being realistic. And we're less anxious because all along, if we're pushing and pushing and pushing, we know darn well that it's not good. So we're fighting ourselves. So some of the anxiety is that internal fight. So I want you to remember that you're allowed to go slower. You're allowed to need rest. You're allowed to have limits. You need planning time. Everyone does. It is not selfish. It is not inefficient. In fact, Stephen Covey talks about quadrant 2 time, where we take that time once a week, once a month, once a quarter, once a year, and we look around and see how things are going. And is our life what we want it to be? Are we doing things in a way that feel right for us? You're allowed to take that time. And I want you to just, if you're not already doing this, to experiment taking just a little bit of time each day, even if it's 15 minutes without interruption, to plan, to rest. I want you to experiment leaving 5 minutes earlier to get somewhere, or not piling on that extra errand or that extra task. And you can do experimentation. What I love about it is, let's say you have an extra errand to run. Go ahead and put that thing in your car that you need to return or whatever. You're not committing to doing that. You're telling yourself, if I get the other things done that I committed to, and if I still have time, I'll go do that final errand. If not, it'll have to happen tomorrow. Then I want you to see how that goes. I want you to continue to do this in different ways, leaving buffer time. Not saying yes to too much stuff unless you know you can definitely make it happen. And when would you make that happen? And how would you make that happen? So just really experimenting and seeing what data comes back for you. Because I think there's nothing more convincing than experiential data. If you've been listening to me, you already know that. And I just want you to be more aware this week and pay attention, be compassionate and loving. If you're still running around like a chicken, that's fine. This is something that, like a lot of personal growth, we change a little bit over time, and it's actually better to do this incrementally so you don't freak yourself out. You just change a little bit at a time. And then if you think about it, 6 months to a year from now, you've changed a lot of things. You're on time for things because you leave an extra 5 or 10 minutes for traffic and finding your keys and all those things. You start turning down things and you don't feel as stressed out every weekend. You set aside planning time and you feel more grounded and confident and peaceful. You stop becoming the yes person that everyone gets to do stuff. You become more mindful about what you really, really want to do. So just experiment and think about other ways too that you can pare down, step back, take a breath, say no, ask for what you need, and take care of you. And again, you can tweak this, you can play with this, you can customize it and do whatever you want with it. That's what's great. It's not all or nothing and it's not black or white. So today we explored those invisible ways boundary issues show up in our everyday routines, especially in how we manage our time and our energy and our expectations. Most of us think of boundaries as things we set with other people, but what about the loving, quiet, internal boundaries we often ignore? Like the ones that involve being realistic about what we can actually get done, or giving ourselves time to rest and think and reset. We talked about over-planning, skipping buffer time, and pushing through all that exhaustion. They're not just bad habits, they're symptoms of boundary blind spots, and they're not healthy and they're not necessary. Thank you so much for joining me today. Know that this work might be difficult to do alone. And look in the show notes. There's plenty of course options to do there. I just love the group coaching course because you have plenty of support and you have me as well. And it's a way to take time to work on you and build your confidence and work on those boundaries, work on getting needs met, work on healing. So everything is there in the show notes. If you have any questions, reach out. I'm always here. All right. So pay it forward. Keep focusing on you. And I'll see you next time.
We hope you took away some useful insights and tools you can begin using right away. If you did, please leave a positive review and share on your social media. Because could you imagine if everyone in your life really got it together? Remember, own it now, so you can really own it later.